Now I came back to my office to let me explain perpetual motion machines. There have been a lot of people who have claimed that kind of imaginary devices that only can exist in their imaginations from the industrial revolution until now, and we call those kind of false devices or false systems as perpetual motion machines. There are two types of perpetual motion machines. The first type perpetual motion machine is a device that violates the first law of thermodynamics. And the perpetual motion machine of the second kind, or PMM2, is a device that violates the second law of thermodynamics. So let me come back to the first type perpetual motion machine, PMM1. Now, that is one example. So let's try to take a look at that system. Okay, we have a cycle that is basically a steam power plant. We have boiler, condenser, and we have pump and turbine. Again, let's assume that one person, one engineer, probably who did not study well thermodynamics, came up with this idea. So what he claims now is that the turbine is connected to the generator. And obviously this generator generates the electricity. Then he kind of devised the resistance heater in the boiler, and he proposed to heat up this resistance heater using the electricity that is supplied from the generator. Okay, a part of electricity that is generated by the generator heats up the boiler, and this heat is enough to make your water to steam to run the turbine and a pump. Okay. Meanwhile, we have a net amount of work that is produced by this entire system. Then, why does this entire system not make sense at all? So let's try to do the first law of thermodynamics analysis. Okay. Again, if we make your entire system, including everything, as your system, then we have one work output, okay, across the boundary, and we have one heat out across the boundary. And boiler is basically sustained by the electrical resistance heater inside, so there should be no heat input. Okay. Now, because that we are talking about cycle, if you try to apply the first law of thermodynamics, then your internal energy change of your system should be 0. And now we have one heat out, and we have one work out. Okay. Now we can write it this equation as this. Okay. But because the system is basically heat engine, so W net out should be positive. So as a result, the negative Q out should be positive, or Q out should be negative. Okay. But obviously in that case, Q out cannot be negative because Q out, the amount of heat that is transferred out from the condenser, should be always kind of certain positive value. So it does not make sense. In other words, this type of the device, the perpetual motion machine, does not follow the first law of thermodynamics. That is why this type of PMM1 device is not possibly realizable in reality. Then how about PMM2? So PMM2 again is a device that violates the second law of thermodynamics. So let's try to see this example. Again, let's assume that we have such a system. So one engineer, again, he didn't study thermodynamics well, But he somehow came up with this crazy idea. So he claims that we have a boiler, and we have pump, and we have a turbine, but he says that, okay, so my system wouldn't need any condenser. So we could save a lot of money, because we don't have to buy a condenser, and somehow it should run by itself. And what is more amazing of that device is we have certain heat input to run the boiler, but entirely this energy can be converted by the work in the turbine. And obviously we need a certain slight work to run the pump, but obviously the net amount of work can be exactly converted by Q in. What do you think about this system? Is it really realizable? Does it make sense to you? Okay, my answer is that this system does not make sense at all because it violates the second law of thermodynamics. So the statement about the second law of thermodynamics we just learned is that there is no such device that has the thermal efficiency of 100%. If you look at this system though, you only have one heat input that entirely converted to net power, net work. Okay? So based on this claim, your thermal efficiency, which is defined as this ratio, okay? But at the same time, according to the first law of thermodynamics, Q in should be exactly same as W net out, because there should be no Q out here. So your conclusion from that system, that device, is you should have 100% of thermal efficiency, which is not possible. Because according to the second law of thermodynamics, there should be no device like that has the 100% thermal efficiency. So obviously, this type of perpetual motion machine is false. So now, because you are learning about this, how this type of PMM, the perpetual motion machines are not possible. So you probably would laugh at if you see somebody else who claimed that, okay, those kind of ideas. But amazingly, a lot of people have claimed that, either intentionally or without they noticed it. So these are certain examples of the PMM machines. So in 1874. One person, he is a kind of scam. Okay, he claimed a hydropneumatic pulsating vacuum engine, and what he said is that this type of his machine could push a railroad train 3,000 miles on 1 liter of water, and a lot of people believed it, and then they invested a lot of money, and they lost everything. Okay. And even you can kind of Google and using the PMM1 or PMM2 or perpetual motion machines, then you can find enormous types of false argument or false claims about those type of machines. Another example is energy augmenter. Okay? So some people claim that they can multiply whatever power it took in. That is amazing, right? And how about that? But the point is that sometimes it's so hard for you to evaluate whether or not they are perpetual motion machines. So I gave you wrong examples. Please read that statement. Okay. So just imagine that you are an evaluator. Okay, and then somebody comes to you because you are mechanical engineers. Then they say, like he says or she says, okay. I mean, they just invented a huge device that involves several hundred kilograms of rotating magnets and kilometers of copper wire that is supposed to be generating more electricity than it is consuming from a battery pack. Okay. That is so confusing, isn't it? Right? But obviously, if you really try to do a very rigorous thermodynamic analysis, then you can realize that this type of device cannot happen. Okay, so that is a totally scam. Okay, and there are a lot more. So you gotta be really wise. And I hope that some of you can, maybe can change your career to be a lawyer, and then you might, have to, evaluate certain, patent proposals and things like that. But you gotta be smart, because a lot of people claim such a false devices, and everything should be in vain. So that is type of examples that about why you should study thermodynamics well and good.